Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Straight Shift. It is a crazy time in the automotive industry right now. Inventory levels across the board for new cars are incredibly low. We're seeing finally the downstream effects of worldwide new car production having been shut down earlier in the year thanks to good old COVID-19. So we're finally seeing the results of that shutdown in inventory shortages. Combine that with the last 2 months, June and July, were record sales for most new car dealers. So what inventory they did have vanished. And on top of all that, this is normally the time of year where inventory levels can get a little bit tight because the manufacturers are switching over to the new model year on their production lines. So, this is 2020, so what can go wrong will go wrong, and it's just creating an inventory problem in the industry. So while we're waiting for the inventory levels to shake out and for new cars to arrive, I wanted to talk about some highly anticipated new vehicles for the 2021 model year. Some of these are brand new, and some of them are some reboots. Kind of like they do with TV shows. They don't come up with any new TV series. They just look back to history and say, okay, what did people like in the past? Let's do that again, because they've already got a built-in audience and it's a lower risk level because they think people watched it in the past. We're going to have a built-in audience. They're going to watch it again. Well, the car manufacturers are doing the same thing. They are rebooting some old brands that were popular in the past and that they are betting will be popular again. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, they're all SUVs. This is the world we live in. Everybody wants SUVs. So I'm going to post some pictures of these vehicles on my Instagram and Facebook so you can see what they look like. And you can get to those social media links via my website, thecarchick.com. Little social media links are at the top. So let's get started. The first one is not an entirely new vehicle brand per se or model, but it's a new version of an existing vehicle. It is the Toyota RAV4 Prime. What is that? It is a new plug-in hybrid version of the ever-popular RAV4 compact SUV, which Toyota redesigned in 2019. Prime is the term that Toyota is using now to refer to their plug-in hybrid line. The Prius Prime began back in 2012, although back then it was called the Prius PHV, which they realized was not a really good marketable brand name, so they changed it in 2016 to Prius Prime because they thought that would sound better. Does that mean that Toyota also built Optimus Prime? I guess he was sort of a plug-in hybrid, what with that matrix in his chest and everything, but All right. Sorry, I'll stop being a nerd now. The RAV4, also when it came out in 2019, they brought it out in both the gas-powered version and a regular hybrid version. So this new plug-in hybrid version is going to be based on that, and it's going to use a modified version of that same four-cylinder motor, just stronger. It's also going to get a higher capacity battery, which is great because it should get up to about 42 miles on a single charge before it runs out of electricity and has to switch over to the conventional hybrid mode, where it's going to get probably about 38 miles per gallon combined, which is pretty decent. The regular RAV4 hybrid gets about that and makes sense since it's based on a similar motor. Just for comparison purposes, the gas-powered RAV gets about 30 miles per gallon combined, so that gives you an idea of what your savings is going to be. Now, 42 miles on a charge may not seem like a lot, but in the plug-in hybrid segment, it's actually pretty darn good. It's bested really only by the Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid, which comes in at about 48 miles on a charge. The Chevy Volt had one of the highest at 53 in its last year, but GM discontinued that vehicle after 10 years. It was just a combination of problems with the car's design and consumers just switching over to a preference for SUVs. So GM was hemorrhaging money on every single Volt that they made and sold. So they realized they really needed to move that cash over to the research on more advanced pure electric cars, as well as autonomous vehicles. GM's putting a lot of money into the autonomous vehicle market. So the RAV4 plug-in hybrid, the RAV4 Prime at a 42-mile range, that's really good. And it's going to get most people through their daily commute before they have to recharge, at least folks that tend to live in the cities who are the target market for these plug-in hybrid vehicles. So it's going to get upgraded brakes, although it's still going to have a longer braking time than the regular vehicles. It's just the nature of these plug-in hybrids, and it will get a retuned suspension. It's going to have pretty darn quick acceleration from what I have been told. I haven't been able to test this out. That's due to the larger electrical motors. But don't think that that means it's going to be super fun to drive, because it still has kind of a loosey-goosey steering feel and a really crappy turning radius. But the efficiency and the practicality of it may make it a compelling vehicle for city dwellers. They just started arriving on dealer lots, mostly in your major metropolitan areas. We don't have any yet that I've seen here in Charlotte, but, then again, we just got a Whole Foods in Uptown Charlotte 2 years ago, so we tend to be a little behind the curve on these progressive things. But when they do hit, expect prices to come in close to 40 grand. So that's about 6 grand more than the regular RAV hybrid and more than 10,000 higher than the gas-powered hybrid. So if you're considering one of these, do the math and make sure that there is a financial business case for you to do that versus getting just a regular gas-powered one, which is decently fuel efficient. Now, another vehicle that Toyota is bringing out for 2021, and this is one of those reboots. Okay, flash back with me to a little over a decade ago, 2009, and you may remember the Toyota Venza, or you might not. That two-row Camry-based SUV, honestly, it looked more like a bloated station wagon with zero rear visibility and horribly uncomfortable headrests. You had to take the headrests out and turn them around just so you didn't have your neck all pushed forward like your chiropractor would scream about. It was awful. Needless to say, it was not exactly a humongous hit in the market, and Toyota canned it after 2015. But it's coming back. Now that crossovers and SUVs make up more than 70% of all vehicle sales when combined with pickup trucks. SUVs, pickup trucks, they're really what is hot right now, and I don't think that trend is going to change anytime soon. And neither do the manufacturers. So Toyota thought, okay, this is as good a time to bring back the Venza, but with a much better design. It's an actual SUV now, although Toyota likes to call it a crossover utility vehicle. And it's going to slot between the RAV4 and the three-row midsize Highlander that was redesigned last year. So it's going to directly compete with the also rebooted two-row Honda Passport and Chevy Blazer. It's also going to compete more with the Subaru Outback, the Hyundai Santa Fe, and the Ford Edge, which have been around for a while. But the new Venza doesn't have quite the cargo capacity as a lot of its direct competitors, but it does win on build quality, the interior refinement. Toyota put a little swankiness to this car, and of course fuel economy, because, wait for it, the new Venza is a hybrid and therefore all-wheel drive. Toyota is fully committing to their hybrid technology, and they've been doing it the longest. They've arguably been doing it the best. If you remember, my podcast a few months ago was about the redesigned 2021 Sienna minivan, which is highly anticipated. And I'm not discussing it here because I did a whole podcast on it. That's going to be an all-hybrid vehicle too. So the Venza is only going to be offered as a hybrid with all-wheel drive. So expect those to start hitting dealer lots maybe later this fall, but it may push into early 2021. Thank you, COVID and all of its delays. Prices will start in the mid-30s. Last year, Kia blew everybody away with their new three-row SUV, the Kia Telluride, which, by the way, are still hard to get, and you still will pay a premium for most models. This year, Kia is going to take a stab at the subcompact SUV category with their new vehicle, the Kia Seltos. It's similar in size to the new Mazda CX-30 that came out for 2020, which I really, really like, as well as the Nissan Rogue Sport, which is the baby version of the Rogue. It'll slot in Kia's lineup between the Kia Soul, which is kind of more considered a hatchback. That's the dancing hamster car, if you'll remember. And the Kia Sportage, which is their compact SUV that competes with that RAV4 and the Honda CR-V. Here's what I really like about the Seltos and why I'm kind of excited about its launch. Number one, I like the styling of it. It looks really sleek and aggressive. They're really starting to take some of those styling cues from different places, different manufacturers, but it's going to have that, we mean business look like the Telluride does. And it's going to have good cargo space for its small size. You can choose to either haul 4 adults very comfortably, or you can boot 2 adults out of the back seat, fold them down, and get a decent amount of cargo in there. That's what I've done in my little Mini Cooper for years. Of course, I can't find 3 other people that are, brave enough to ride with me. So that's never really been a problem. But the interior design of the Seltos is going to give us more upscale materials than people normally expect from Kia. But if you've really been looking at Kia, you've seen that they have been doing this for years, and a lot of their vehicles are more upscale than you kind of think they would be. The Kia brand still has this cheap and crappy image in the marketplace that's not accurate. The Kia vehicles, just like Hyundai, have gotten really, really good in the last few years, and they have been making them more upscale, and they're just going to continue that with the Seltos. And it's also going to come in some fun and unique color options, including some 2-tone combinations where you can get either a white or a black roof to contrast with the rest of the vehicle. And that'll just be kind of fun, especially for people that want to not look like everybody else on the road. They want to be able to express their individuality through the car. I'm all for that. I drive a pink Mini. What do you expect? The other thing that I like about it is the technology in both Hyundai and Kia, because they're owned by the same parent company and they share some same architecture, including their technology. It's really superior to a lot of the competition, in my opinion. Number one, it actually works, and it's very intuitive and easy to use. The top level SX trim on this Seltos is going to get the big 10-inch touchscreen that they have put in the Telluride. And I like that it sits high on the dash, so you don't have to look down at the screen and completely take your eyes off the road, which, not safe. It's up there in your line of sight where your eyes should be when you're driving. So if you do need to glance at it, especially if you're running navigation, you're not taking your eyes as much off the road as you do on normal screens in other cars. And if you happen to be having a really crappy day or experiencing a lot of road rage, it can play soothing nature sounds to you, including but not limited to sea waves, a crackling fireplace, or forest sounds, along with soothing animated visuals on the screen. I'm just worried that you might fall asleep. It's really quirky, I know, but what do you expect from the company that brought you dancing hamsters? The 2021 Kia Seltos is already starting to hit dealer lots. There are some in stock around the country right now. Prices start in the mid to high 20s, so you get a lot of bang for your buck with this thing. Another highly anticipated SUV, and it's probably not more highly anticipated by anybody but me, except maybe the dealers, is the arrival of the 2021 Genesis GV80. Yes, Genesis, the Highline brand that spun off of Hyundai back in 2015, finally is getting an SUV in their lineup. I've only been asking them for years now, when are you getting an SUV? When are you getting an SUV? And their dealers have been asking, so when are we getting an SUV? It's finally happening. Genesis has been making really great luxury sedans, but this SUV thing has been such a hole in their lineup. And lineup is a strong word. They only have 3 vehicles. They have the 3 sedans, the G70, 80, and 90. But in a world where so much of the market is SUVs, when you are the only people that don't have one, it really, really hurts your brand. So everybody is super excited about this. But if you think the GV80 is just going to be a swankier version of the Hyundai Palisade, which is the cousin to the Kia Telluride that came out last year, oh, you are so, so very wrong. First of all, Genesis does not do front-wheel drive. They only do rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So these are my people. And just because the GV80 is an SUV does not mean they are going to change this inherent design philosophy. It's still going to be rear-wheel drive with an all-wheel drive version optional. Just because it's an SUV does not mean you shouldn't get the performance and the handling and the fun factor that you can only get in a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Okay, getting off of my soapbox here, but it will have all the swankiness of what you've come to expect with Genesis in spades. This vehicle is absolutely stunning. It looks a lot like a Bentley, and they've had some driving around in Asia already. They've already hit the Korean market. And a reporter I know went over there and was driving around Korea and driving around Seoul, and literally people who were driving things like Bentleys and the really high-end SUVs were pulling him over and flagging him down at stoplights because what is that thing? In Korean, obviously. They were really impressed by how beautiful it was, but without the six-figure price tag of a Bentley. That's one of the great things about Genesis and even Hyundai in the regular line of cars. You get a lot of bang for your buck. And it's about the same size as the Palisade, so you're going to get the 3 rows of seating, which is critical. Although, like most mid-size SUVs, that third row is a little bit tight, and it's not as easy to access, but it's still better than a lot of its competitors, and I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. The reason I'm so excited about this vehicle is that, in my opinion, there really hasn't been a fantastic, just clear-cut winner in that 3-row midsize SUV segment on the luxury level. One that combines good technology, the roominess and the usability of having decent third row, still having good cargo capacity, but also having good reliability and reasonable maintenance costs. Different vehicles in the luxury segment do one, maybe do 2 of those things well, but they don't do all of those things. Lexus, obviously, hands down, is your most reliable luxury brand, but their technology has been their weak point. It's dated, it's frustrating. It's definitely Lexus' weak spot. And they haven't had the best 3-row SUV options. The popular RX, which is definitely their best-selling SUV, and it's fantastic as a 2-row. But when they made it a little bit longer a couple of years ago and called it the RXL and crammed a third row back there, when I say crammed, I mean crammed. It's very, very cramped. And I don't even consider the RX a 3-row SUV for that reason. The GX is more of a mid-size 3-row SUV, but it's still very truckish. And if you're going to take it off-road, great. It rides great off-road, but it rides very much like a truck on the road, and it has some quirks to it that make it not as practical for a lot of people that just want to drive it around town. Although the side mirrors do fold completely in, so if you need to park it in a tight space, it will do that for you. But again, technology issues. So, looking outside that, in the past, the Acura MDX has been kind of the top of the 3-row midsize SUV food chain. But since they redesigned it in 2016, the reliability has absolutely plummeted. If you go into Consumer Reports or you look at all the J.D. Powers ratings, it's just absolutely plummeted, which makes me so mad, but it's related to the electronics problems primarily that have been plaguing Honda and Acura and why there's a big class action lawsuit. So that's been frustrating to me. My go-to mid-size 3-row SUV in the luxury segment recently has been the Audi Q7 because it's kind of given the best balance of all of those things, but being a German car, it's expensive to maintain. If you're going to lease it and turn it in before the warranty runs out and not incur, anything really but oil changes and basic early maintenance, you're fine. But the technology, while the technology that Audi has with their virtual cockpit is extraordinarily cool, it's a little overly complicated and over-engineered for some people, and heaven forbid when that stuff breaks. It's going to be ridiculously expensive to swap out the entire dash and all of those modules. So German cars just come with a high cost of ownership that you have to accept if you want to own a German car. But this is why I'm so excited about the Genesis coming out, because even though it's a new vehicle and we don't know what its reliability is going to be, Genesis and Hyundai recently have had a very good track record, and they back that up with their long warranty. You get 5 years, 60,000 miles on the full warranty, and 10 years or 100,000 miles on the powertrain, and that is definitely the best in the business. So between that and their very intuitive technology, I'm super excited for this vehicle to finally hit. And they're actually already technically here. There's a whole bunch of them sitting in containers at the ports because as a new vehicle, they have to get final stamp approval from the EPA, which is in Michigan, which has been shut down because of the pandemic. So Genesis is waiting for the EPA to be able to reopen enough to stamp their paperwork and get these vehicles onto the dealer lots. All right. So on that note, oh, by the way, when they do hit, they're going to start at about $50,000 and go up from there, which is in line, if not a little bit less than most of their competitors. So on that note, I am going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the return of some iconic American SUVs. Be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
The Car Chick is back for more Straight Shift.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Straight Shift. Today we're talking about brand new 2021 model vehicles that are coming out that we're very excited about. And the American automakers, of course, also being on the, hey, let's make more SUVs bandwagon. They are leveraging some monikers that are iconic, have worked well for them in the past, and they are hoping that they will be successful for them going forward. The Ford Bronco Sport and the Chevy Trailblazer are coming out for 2021. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't those come out already? Yes and no. In 2019, Chevy brought back the Blazer, which is a midsize but two-row SUV with some pretty badass muscular styling. Unfortunately, at the expense of headroom and cargo space, but it looks awesome. But for 2021, Chevy is bringing back the Trailblazer moniker. Those of you who are old enough to remember back to 1999, the original Trailblazer was the name of the upscale trim level of the S10 Blazer, which was their midsize SUV that was based on the Chevy S10 pickup truck platform. But in 2002, Chevy took the Trailblazer and made it its own separate vehicle that was bigger than the regular Blazer, which got scrapped in 2005 to be replaced by the Equinox. But the Trailblazer survived until 2009 when it was replaced by the Traverse. Are you following me? Come on, people, keep up, keep up. It's only going to get more confusing from here. The new 2021 Trailblazer is going to be smaller than the new 2020 Blazer. It's going to compete with other subcompact SUVs like the Hyundai Kona, the Subaru Crosstrek, and the Kia Seltos that I mentioned before the break. But of course, Chevy's still keeping the Equinox and the Traverse, in addition to the Trax and the Tahoe and the Suburban. So honestly, if you cannot find an SUV that is exactly the perfect size for whatever you need, you just need to go back to riding the bus. I mean, there's literally an SUV, a crossover of every possible shape and size out there. But it's going to be even more confusing because the new Trailblazer, it looks very similar in size to Chevy's other little baby bear in their lineup, the Chevy Trax. But there are very significant differences, so pay attention. The Trailblazer, first of all, just looks so much cooler, it's not even funny. The Trax styling is more kind of rounded and subdued, and what one might call cute. I can't talk, I drive a Mini, they're cute. But the Trailblazer is going to have a much more aggressive roofline and grille. It was clearly influenced by the look of the Camaro. And although the Trailblazer and the Trax both have a really small, super small base engine that puts out a really less than exciting 137 horsepower, the Trailblazer has a whole lot more torque. So it's going to have what I call oomph. That's what torque really is. It's oomph. So when you need to pass the slowpoke on the freeway or you need to pull out into traffic, when you stomp on that gas pedal, it's actually going to pick up and go for you. The Trailblazer is also going to have a second engine option that has more power and oomph, but it's still going to get a combined about 28 miles to the gallon, so it's a good fuel-efficient option. And the other difference between the two is the amount of cargo space. The Trailblazer is going to have way more cargo space, primarily due to its fold flat front passenger seat back. So the passenger front seat, it will fold flat down so that you can get longer things into it. So you can get your skis in there. I don't know that you'll get a kayak in there, but you might try. And if you do, please send me a video. You can still go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get shelves. You can get lumber. You'll just be able to get more versatile stuff in there. And that's great. So when the new Chevy Trailblazers begin to hit dealer lots, which are hopefully going to be any day now, they're going to start in the low to mid 20s and go up from there. So they'll be a good value as well. But because Ford cannot stand to be outdone by Chevy, or vice versa, this whole Ford-Chevy rivalry has been going on since the beginning of time, Ford, of course, is doing the exact same thing. They are going to reboot both the Bronco and the smaller Bronco Sport. They're lagging a little bit behind Chevy this time, but they started the trend back in 1965. The original Bronco is one of the oldest SUVs that was a phenomenal off-road vehicle available to us civilians. It competed directly with what was then the Jeep CJ5, as well as the International Harvester Scout. If you remember those old Scouts, man, I love those. One of my best friends had one of those when we were teenagers, and he loved that car. The Bronco started out as a small version. It was on its own platform, and it was around the same size of that Jeep and the Scout. But in 1978, when they brought out the second generation of the Bronco, they bulked it up, they stretched it out, and they made it a large SUV that was based on the Ford F-100 pickup truck chassis. And they continued that as the Bronco evolved. And the third gen, which debuted about 1980, I think, was based on the new Ford F-150 pickup. And it continued that way through the life cycle of the Bronco. And in 83, Ford branched out and said, we probably need to make a small one of these too. So they created the baby Bronco, as we called it, the Bronco 2. And it was closer to the size of the original first-gen Bronco from 1965. And it was based on the Ranger pickup truck frame. The Ranger had also just come out. So why not, if you're going to make a small pickup truck, why not also make a smaller version of the Bronco and get your economies of scale basing it on the same frame? And that was a really great idea. and it did provide better fuel economy. It had more maneuverability on the trails, but it had one fatal flaw. It rolled over all the time for years. Ford knew this problem existed. It became known as the bucking Bronco, and they just were not either able to fix the problem or just didn't care enough to put the money into fixing the problem. So after 6 years, they just kind of retired it. Actually, a little more than 6 years. 1990, I believe, was the last year of the baby bucking Bronco, which was a bummer. I really loved those cars. I was a huge Bronco fan when I was in college. My college roommate was from a little town in Idaho called Castleford. Literally population of 216 people. Tiny, tiny little town. Of course, everybody were farmers and ranchers. And she got me into the concept of these SUVs and these four-wheel drive off-road vehicles that you could do these different fun things with. Because my life up until that point had been rear-wheel drive sports cars, racing, doing things I should not have been doing. But she taught me an appreciation for a whole different class of vehicle and a whole different type of fun. So I spent time at her place during the summer before our senior year in college. And then we also did spring break senior year at her house so that we could go skiing up at Sun Valley. And I learned how to wrangle cattle with a pickup truck. That was a skill that I just never in a million years thought that I would learn. That was a lot of fun. So you can actually drift a rear-wheel drive pickup truck around a group of cows that do not want to go back in their pen, and you can make them go the direction you want them to go. It's so incredibly cool. So I learned to wrangle cattle with a pickup truck. But she also loved the Broncos, and we had a couple people on campus that had the Bronco too. And we were always just looking at that thing going, man, I want one. I don't care if they roll over. So this is why my parents did not let me buy my own car at that age, because I probably would not have made a smart or safe choice. But the new versions that are coming out, I'm sure will not have those problems. We have much better safety standards and technology these days. But Ford is going to bring back both the full-size Bronco and the baby Bronco, which they're now going to call the Bronco Sport. They're going to be released as 2021 models. The full-size Bronco is probably not going to get here until sometime in spring of 2021. It's had some delays, but the Bronco Sport will hopefully arrive by the end of this year. I love the styling of the full-size Bronco. It is going to be old school, body on frame, off-road monster that could very well dethrone the Jeep Wrangler as the king of the trail. The styling of this thing is so retro and so weird that it's totally cool. Purists, granted, are probably going to bemoan the fact that it's not going to have a V8 engine, but, that ship has sailed, people. Nobody's really making V8s as much anymore outside of the supercars. So everything is going to have smaller but turbocharged motors. So the Bronco will have a base engine of a turbocharged inline 4. I know that does not sound very sexy, but it's going to put out some decent power. But if it's not enough for you, they also will have a twin turbo V6 version, which should be very cool. And they're even planning a hybrid version in the future. So that kind of makes me go, hybrid off-road vehicle. Okay, whatever, I can roll with that. But I'm excited because it will have a manual transmission option, at least married to the smaller engine. Yay, manual transmission, 3 pedals. But in cool retro style, you can take the doors off, you can take the roof off, you can lock the front and rear differentials, you can blast your tunes through the Ford Sync system, and you can keep from getting lost with your favorite mapping program running through Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Fuel economy ratings haven't been released yet, but who cares? You can drive this thing through nearly 3 feet of water without voiding the warranty. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. But because Ford can't seem to make less than at least 7 versions of any vehicle it produces, they literally have the most models on the market. They're close to 60 different vehicles that Ford produces. So the Bronco is going to have 7 different versions of awesomeness, and they're going to run anywhere from 30,000 up probably north of 60,000, depending on just how much awesomeness you are willing to pay for. The baby Bronco, the Bronco Sport, on the other hand, that is going to be based on the Ford Escape. Their goal with that is to blend the practicality and the fuel economy of a crossover like the Little Escape, but with the cool factor of the Bronco and the off-road capabilities. So again, you're going to have a bazillion different trim levels to choose from, as well as a boatload of different off-road options and accessories. So depending on how you configure this vehicle, I think it's going to navigate both the city and the trail equally well, depending on what you want to do. Ford also swears that you're going to be able to get 2 mountain bikes side by side, standing upright in the back of this vehicle. We'll see if that works. That sounds kind of cool. You have to put the seats down, obviously, but I don't know why this is important. I guess there are a lot of people who want to put their bikes inside the car so they don't get rained on or whatnot. I don't know. I don't ride bicycles of any kind, so not my jam, but you should be able to stand 2 of them up in the back, which is unique. Most SUVs have a higher cargo floor, and apparently you cannot do that. But I like that the rear window, the glass in the tailgate, is going to be able to open independently. That was a thing that these small SUVs or SUVs just of the past did, which is nice because if you do need to carry something super long, you can just open that glass and stick it out the back and tie it down. Or you can just easily pop that open, reach in and grab something that you forgot or that you need, and you don't have to open and close the full heavy lift gate. So that's a nice little retro touch that, it's just kind of nostalgic, but it's also very practical. So I'm really glad that they're going to do that. When the Bronco does start to hit lots, which I said hopefully will be later this year, prices are going to start in the mid to high 20s. Ford is already taking deposits on both versions of the Bronco. So if you want one, you may want to go ahead and get on their list. I think it's a $100 fully refundable deposit. So you're not necessarily committing, but you are securing your place in line, because I'm sure there probably will be a wait list for these because the monikers are so iconic. There's almost a cult following for the classic Broncos, and a lot of people are super excited. Ford has been teasing us since back in 2004 that they were going to bring the Bronco back, and they haven't put their money where their mouth was. So now they finally are, and I am very excited about them. I don't know if they're going to be reliable. They're not going to be fuel efficient. I don't really care. They're just cool. There's some things that are just worth the headaches that come with them because they are cool, and these vehicles may in fact fall into that category. So check out the photos that I'm going to post on my Instagram so you can see what these things look like, and let me know what you guys think about them. Do you like the new retro weird styling? Are you excited about any of these vehicles coming out? I want to hear from you. So until next time, folks, whatever you are currently driving, please do so safely. We'll see you next time.
The Straight Shift podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, the Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or the Car Chick.